Hello and welcome to another Best Junglers episode, where I will give you the best performing junglers in solo queue that you can use to carry, win, and climb. Yes, the jungle meta can feel stagnant, can feel frustrating, but if you make these videos every 2 weeks like I have, you can really start to see the shifts in performance of certain picks. As such, in the core overall best junglers list, we have a nice mix-up in terms of the order, maybe some new shows, but the biggest shift around is in the low MMR specific champions and in the high MMR specific champions. And if you're waiting to see if Volleyball will show up in this video, I guess you'll have to wait and see. But if you are looking for more information on how to play him and maximize his skill set, I released the most in-depth champion guide I've ever made on my channel earlier this week. And I will link that below for you. And all that's left to say is please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to check out the Patreon if you want to support the channel, if you value the quality over quantity approach. All of that support is greatly appreciated. And now without hesitation, let's begin. Well, as you can see, Graves still sits atop the most versatile and well-rounded jungler in the game for solo queue specifically. Yes, Fiddlesticks is the most OP jungler currently in the game. However, Graves can really apply to any of the jungle gameplays I make. Ganking, farming, counter jungling, soloing objectives, being the invader type, lethality, crit, maybe death dance, and cleaver. Really, he's just a jungler that you can mold into your specific playstyle and apply to whatever game you might find yourself in. Yes, his win rate has decreased a little bit, however his usage rate, his ban rate, and all those justifications I just listed keep him atop the tier list for me personally. And it's definitely the more reliable approach if you want that sweet LP, which is why I assume you are actually watching this video. And on that note, I did release a gameplay detailing how to maximize the usage of Fiddlesticks. I may have used the phrase sucky suck a bit too much, but that's really what he does. His playstyle, however, is so insane because of how quickly he farms, how devastating his teamfight ability can be, but there's a little bit of a gap there where if you fall too far behind, you don't camp sequence, you don't use his playstyle, his surprise, his effigies, everything that makes him as creepy as he looks, then you will find yourself just being a squishy thing that gets melted down and really has no purpose to his existence except to T-pose and look fancy. Riot did go way too far with the buff such that we were seeing tank Fiddlesticks top lane with Aftershock. That Aftershock is now showing up in the jungle a little bit. However, his core playstyle is still farm the hell out of the map, destroy all junglers by being 2 or 3 levels up, soloing those objectives, and then basically just running over the game being a true assassin. And yes, that's really what you are when you are turbo fed. And all of this just makes him the best hyper carry in the game right now, except for, of course, Shadow Assassin Kayn. He might take offense to that statement, but it definitely is a very close second. Kayn just has such versatility. He also farms very quickly. He maximizes the experience. You can go Rast, you can go Shadow Assassin. That's what the fresh memes on Twitter are about. You go from the 4'10" skinny Kayn into the 400-pound 9-foot Rast. And if you do that with a lead and you get your warrior, your cleaver, your death stance, well basically I'd love to see tank Fiddlesticks versus that Rast and see who actually dies first. Kayn's triple personality disorder, his insane map scaling, his farm ability, the option essentially to hotfix whatever champion you want to play in champ select depending on the enemy team comp, definitely has him rounding out the top 3 junglers in this video. And now because he isn't flashy, because he's a tank, because he just blobby blobs, because apparently he's never done a leg day in his life, people really are sleeping on Zac. I don't know how that's possible as the best tank in solo queue because of his ganking angles, because of how he scales so well into the late game, because he can almost match any team comp. What he lacks in terms of farming, what he lacks in terms of soloing objectives, he makes up for by altering the win condition and forcing teams to really think about the positioning. And guess what, in solo queue they're not gonna do that. So while he lacks a certain 1v9 carry, hyper carry ability, he's still the best solo queue tank jungler that you can use if you're actually looking to climb with this playstyle. Now, I'm hesitant to call Master Yi a playstyle, it's more like a degenerate lifestyle. Nonetheless, if you want free dodges, you pick Taric and Yi. If you want free wins in low elo, you play Yi. Basically, at this point, he is what he is. I'm never going to stop those mains who play him. I'm going to try and prevent all of you from picking it up and developing bad habits. It's just, I'm looking forward to the itemization rework for the next season. Maybe they'll change Rageblade and the nature of his kits such that we don't have to fear him getting 2 kills at any point in the game. Now, Elise, his next step, she kind of goes up and down depending on what other junglers are strong. Farming junglers that really outscale can kind of dominate her game style. But whenever there's a bit of an early game focus in the meta, maybe some laners are kind of strong at early games, she really does play around that beautifully and she can still become an absolute assassin jungler when you get a few Magi stacks. But again, still a high skill cap pick, still need to close up by the mid game. But if you have that totem pathing in control, Elise is still good to go. Unless you hate spiders, then don't play her. Or maybe you just spied it out from playing Spider-Man on PS4, looking forward to the new edition coming later this year. Not to be outdone, but I just can't ignore it anymore. Her farming, her scaling, her threat, the big question mark location once she hits post 6, the fact that if the enemy jungler doesn't actually get ahead early means that she will just farm, opportunistically gank, counter jungle, collapse, pick off, and then basically just take over the game. And in most MMRs, you're just not going to be able to keep up and ward enough to stop the one-shots and protect your ADC from themselves. And finally on this page, Olaf's win rate has dipped a little bit. All these other junglers coming out of the woodwork that can farm really well, outscale him very quickly, and sort of combat him to a decent degree in the early game have definitely reduced his effectiveness. However, I think people are writing him off too soon. He still can do the full clear, he still has huge early game impact, and when you hit 6 with a lead, you can still run over literally anyone, so keep him in mind, don't write him off. And now onto our A tier page where we have a bigger mix-up of champions and order shifts than we did in the last video and on the first page in this video. Shako. I actually had my first coaching session with Shako. Of course, that might be uploaded to the gameplay channel shortly. I was really shocked considering people know my disdain for the champion. But his unique playstyle, his one-trick ability, and the fact that if you play him well, it's just so easy to take over a game, means he gets to retain his spot here and keep his boxes. Unless, of course, you wish to smash them with Valhir. That's right, the bear is back, the buffs have come through, the bug fixes have happened, the skins are released, everyone's excited. Except they're not really. I made the guide, everyone's just kind of like, he still sucks. Guess what? He doesn't suck. He's fine. You just don't know how to play him. Learn how to play him, learn how to itemize, and this champion will be getting you a lot of sweet wins on this current patch. His power curve is currently higher than the old rework Volibear with a similar play rate. Of course, the champions I like, Ornn, Zyra, Volibear, Warwick, things like this, aren't very popular to the greater meta. And yes, he is not as easy to use as before, and the itemization can become confusing if you don't know what stats to focus on. However, I really don't think there's a better champion in the game that can disrespect the corpses of your fallen laners once you destroy them than the new Volibear. That chest pound is just fantastic, and guess what? You can also skate with it, kind of moon dance all over them. It's fun. The tried and true Nunu and Willem will never be removed from this spot. They are always relevant, they are always doing well, they always have a good win rate. Why do you not play them? That's a good question. I made a video about this with Mobalytics. Why don't people play Nunu and Willem when they always seem to do well? Perpetually meta transcendent, objective dominators, and the most sad death animation in the game, forcing you to play very safe and intelligently such that you don't feed. Unless of course you're going disco Nunu, but as always we don't recommend that playstyle. Rek'Sai is still always present when you have things like Rengars and Evelynns doing very well in the meta, when you have psychological threats of getting 2 dragons and 2 heralds, and basically have a really strong early game can force enemies to tilt. And let's be honest, that's why everyone hates us, because we tilt them by basically not only abusing their own ignorance, but also flaunting our majestic knowledge of the game and the macro state. So yeah, Rex is pretty good at that. But if you don't really want to do that to everyone and you really want to do it against, mages and ADCs, barring the Zhonya's itemization spike, then Rengar is still good to go. I don't know, he could have a braid competition with Volibear, you'd basically have to, be your own judge. But the time that you put into this champion is always rewarded with great skill expression and the ability to take over games in a way that's basically unrivaled. Now, if you're not a cat person and you prefer dogs, well, actually, I keep saying this, and as a Warwick main, I know he's a chimera now, he's not really a pure werewolf. So yes, we're saying it for memes, but we know what he is. Still the most accessible jungler for all new players, very easy to farm, learn map awareness, learn objective control, take over games in the low to mid MMR, and there is a ton of skill expression, I have no idea why people think there isn't, that can let you climb through diamond all the way up as far as you want to go. But if you're a monkey and you just like climbing and then falling and making a fool of yourself, Wukong. Yeah, Wukong hasn't had the best time against certain of the meta champions ahead of him on this list, which is why he's fallen down, but his win rate is still good, and that knockup is still absolutely obscene. Can we please remove it? But yeah, if you have the surprise factor and you get fed, that's wonderful. If you know how to play him and teamfight him, that's great. I do think he performs very, very well, which is why he's here, but overall, just a little bit lackluster. And the same thing for Echo. Once you get Giga fed, it's absolutely hysterical, but he's an assassin. That's what you expect. He just doesn't farm as well as the farmers, and he doesn't gank as well as the gankers. And now he's got certain matches in the meta that can deal with him. His 1v9 ability has definitely decreased, even if the disdain for his ultimate is timeless. You get it? Timeless? No? Okay, onto the low elo page. As always, there isn't much to say about the specific champions as we've seemed to have covered most of them. However, Mercy Yi, Kayn, and Volibear seem to be absolutely dominating the win rates if you want to get to gold. Kayn just has this way of taking over games in low elo, especially because you can get away with farming a bit more, not having to fight as much. And obviously being able to adapt into Rast or Shadow Assassin in low elo is way more useful once you get into those 35-40 minute grind fests. Mercy is always the king of climbing in this particular elo for the same reasons, And Shyvana can do the same thing, just please remember the AD bruiser build does exist. I know you all want to be sexy dragons, maybe the type that can get a donkey husband, and hey look, Zack is Shrek in this analogy. But it requires way more finesse than would otherwise be really used in this particular MMR. It's better sometimes to brute force wins, to dive in fights, to control it, actually be present, you know, rather than poking from a distance. But yes, both playstyles work, AP is great, just don't forget that Bruiser does exist. If you find yourself diving in and dying too much, mix it up and carry on playing Shyvana. And you know, Rammus is always good whenever ADCs are there and people don't ward free ganks. Amumu is basically the same thing except a team fighting version of Rammus, and you do of course have the option of going AP and basically one-shotting targets as you wish. To this day, I started playing in Season 3, to this day I'm still tilted by Amumu's. And now on the high-low page, this is where you really see if something is truly OP, when it actually dominates not only in the lower mid ranks, but also in the ranks of the gods. We know, the whiny people on Twitter. Yeah, the challenger players, they like Fiddlesticks, you know, they like playing him, they don't like playing against it because the laners are more safe, the Fiddlesticks can get away with farming a lot, and then they just kill everyone. And good abusers of this champion are really disgusting at it. That being said, you still have your quintessential mainstays in the Nidalees, also just got buffed recently, Lee Sin is omnipresent. The Rengar challenger players always show themselves to be sort of a breed above everyone else. But in addition to the rest that you see on this list that we've already talked about, don't forget that Kindred is still around, Olaf is still around. There's a lot of champions you can use in Masters Plus to really get wins, but it's been really nice seeing Fiddlesticks and Kayn specifically enter the high elo meta and basically provide a lot more for me to scout that isn't just Lee Sin versus Elise, because good grief guys, really, there are other champions. And even if that was a message indirectly towards pro play, I hope this list was interesting to you. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something. Maybe find a pick that you can use in the current meta to go and get those wins, get that fresh LP. Don't sleep on Volibear. Have a look at the guy below. It really feels great to play. There are champions that scale into the late game. There are farming champions, ganking champions, early game, tanks. There is currently a whole bunch of variety in the playstyles that you can use to get wins and climb. Best of luck in your goals. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment if you did. Have a look at the Patreon if you want to support the content. Once again, thank you for watching, and as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.